Hello and welcome to this review of this Bosch RAFI keyboard and the EBS Videodidact pad. I've had both of these for a while and I had wanted to do them earlier, but other stuff kept coming up. Anyway, here it is now. They're both donations, although they were donated separately. Originally I thought the Videodidact had a different version of switch, but they turned out to both use RS76M, so I decided to collapse them into one review. EBS is a company that make multimedia training and education systems, and the Videodidact is one of such devices. According to product pages, this device was used for image transfer, and there's a few buttons on it like Beamer and Video Aus and Dunkel, which suggested it was used for PowerPoint presentations or the like. It's also got an absolute fuck ton of indicator lights on there. In fact, only 2 of the keys don't have one. It uses an extremely long cable with a serial connector of some kind. It's not quite a VGA plug, I think, but it's probably something similar. Regardless, I can't use it on a PC, unfortunately. The Bosch keyboard was manufactured by RAFI, but although there's a few stickers on there, nothing stands out as a model number and I couldn't really find anything about it. In addition, this also uses a weird plug, so I couldn't use this one either, but it's still a pretty interesting board. It has a bunch of funky legends on the keycaps like the Videodidact does, but unlike the Videodidact, they're mostly symbols and I have no idea what they're supposed to represent or what they could possibly be used for. Maybe that's the fire hydrant button to be used in cases of arson? That's probably the painting of a hand getting squished by a machine compactor button. Gotta have one of them. And here is the slinky button, which initiates the down the stairs slinky motion vital to many applications in many different fields. Yeah, this one's a bit of an enigma. Well, let's start with the construction. The Videodidact is a thin-ish hollow plastic box, and it's a lot lighter than it might appear to be. Of course, it's not really a keyboard, and it doesn't have feet other than these little rubber pads at the bottom, so construction wasn't the first thing on their minds, I'm sure. That said, the cable is pretty chunky, and it's pretty strongly secured in the case though. The Bosch, on the other hand, is one of the more well-built keyboards I've ever seen, and it has a very industrial or even militaristic look about it. The top plate is very thick plastic, and it sounds quite dense. The back panel, meanwhile, is metal and is not exactly thin either. The keyboard's pretty heavy, actually. The back panel is secured via screws and clips and bolts and this little plastic thing here, which looks like a random loose rivet or something. The feet are unique. I've never seen anything like them, and they're pretty fucking massive too. They're these strange stalks that point out almost like levers, and in fact that's basically what they are because they're not a flip-out design like most others are. If you try to move them about, you'll find that they won't budge. Instead, you'll have to pull them out, leave them over, and then pop them back in. If you're wondering whether the latter mode sticks out rather much, you're completely right. It sticks out like a sore thumb, which is probably what you'll end up with if you try to use the keyboard at this preposterous angle. The feet are obviously rock solid and super stable though, and they even have a little rubber ring in the middle to prevent slipping, a cool and interesting design and all. It's also got one of the most over-the-top cable retainer systems I've seen so far. Most cable retainers work like little gutters that you can fit the cable into so it comes out at a different angle, which is pretty useful. This one, however, seems to have taken it one step further and included 3 of these things that you supposedly have to put the cable on and then screw in this retaining plate. I mean, geez, isn't that a bit overkill, guys? Speaking of the cable, it's titanic as well, possibly the thickest keyboard cable I've seen yet, and the connector is just out of this world. It's all metal and it's heavy as a gold shit. I'll show you what I mean. Here, I'll drop it. So whatever it was meant for, it was definitely meant to stand up to some serious abuse. As for the switches, both use a type of RAFI RS76M switch. Now, RAFI are probably most well known by keyboard enthusiasts as the other company that made Hall effect switches, apart from Honeywell. The design of those Hall effect RAFIs is over 40 years old, and unlike Honeywell's, the RAFI switches are still available apparently. However, RAFI also made electromechanical switches, and that's what these keyboards use. The Bosch uses a version with a salmon-colored slider, and it's the basic full travel type of switch. RAFI also made several derivative and similar switches. Here is an orange slider version I'll use to show you what it does and how it works. It's an extremely simple switch design, one of the simplest I've seen to date. Basically, one terminal is a diode lying down at the side of the switch housing, while the other terminal is a square metal frame wrapped around the inside of the switch. The frame rests on a plastic peg jutting from the slider, which is held up by a coil spring, so basically the slider holds up the frame. When you press it down, the frame is allowed to go down and eventually touch the diode, closing a circuit. They did do a version without a diode, but I'm pretty sure the version in the Bosch is also a diode type. It seems like a pretty robust switch design to me. It doesn't look like there's that much that can go wrong with it, and it's quite stable. Also, the switches are incredibly quiet, possibly the quietest switch I know. It's unbelievable. Here, let me give you a taste of that. Compare that to some Cherry MX Blacks. And I mean, Cherry MX Blacks aren't even a loud switch or anything. The feel is a bit unremarkable. It's a somewhat stiff linear switch, and it reminds me a bit of MX Black, although they feel more inconsistent, with some switches feeling like there's parts on the inside rubbing together. Of course, I can't say what it's like to use on a daily basis, but one thing I did notice is that the spacebar is a bit weird. Oftentimes, people cite Topra as the quietest key switch out there, but, well, I'll just show you. Nope, this one is definitely a lot quieter than Topra. It uses a much stiffer yellow switch and some kind of elaborate wire stabilizer system that pokes through the plate, and it takes a lot of effort to move it. It's so bad that it slows the spacebar down to the point where it doesn't even pop back up immediately. It looks like a sponge or something. The Videodidact uses a different type of switch, which I first mistook for the Hall effect version because I hadn't seen it before, but as soon as I got it in, I found that it's actually also an electromechanical switch. The basic idea is the same. The slider holds up a component that can move down when you press a key, but it's executed a bit differently, and the internal parts don't look anything like it at all. First of all, it has an LED in it, which is probably why they had to redesign it, because the frame and the other switch takes up so much space. So instead there's this two-sided fork thing, which is sitting in an arm loop in the slider, held down by a tiny coil spring inside the slider that I hope you can see from this angle. Therefore, the thing in the slider isn't one of the terminals being lifted up, it's just a conductive element. The two terminals are stationary on the side, lying down. When pressed down, the slider holding the fork moves down, bridging the contacts and closing the switch, and over travel is made possible by the small coil spring inside the slider. I hadn't noticed this coil spring at first, but it explains the strange key feel I'd been experiencing on these. The problem is that as the second coil spring is engaged, the key feel becomes both scratchier as well as noticeably stiffer, so it's not as pleasant as the more basic version in the Bosch. It also appears to bind a bit more. It's not quite as happy with off-center key presses, while this is no problem at all on the Bosch. Furthermore, the Bosch also uses a latching version of the LED switch as well, for the caps lock switch. Like many latching designs, it uses a little latching pin that moves around in a track, but it's a bit different from other designs. First of all, it feels much smoother and more linear than most designs I've seen. Typically, latching switches have a very nasty key feel, but this isn't too bad. Second, the latching track is actually on a loose block located here, retained by the housing, rather than just being engraved on one of the switch parts. You can even take most of it out of the switch, but I can't really show that with the camera. And third, possibly because the track plate is so loose, it doesn't actually latch very well. It's not until you take the keycap off and really pin the plate down that it works properly. Seems a bit sloppy, this, really. The keycaps on both are double-shot ABS, in the case of the Bosch with white lettering, and on the Videodidact the LED windows are double-shot into the caps, and the lettering is rimless pad printing. The keycaps are spherical, which looks really old-fashioned. And they are uniprofile, meaning that they all have the same slant to them. In this case, they're actually all completely flat, as you can see. They're not that thick, but they seem pretty well made regardless, and the lettering is extremely sharp, even on the pad-printed caps on the Videodidact. They use a kind of square block mount that's generally referred to as RAFI mount, although Siemens also used it on their STB switches and ITW on their low-profile magnetic valves. Both switches, especially the magnetic valves, kind of look like the RAFI switches too. The mount is fully compatible with keycaps from both switches, by the way. Interestingly, the caps lock key, or at least that's what I think it was, seems to use a loose insert on top that could clip in, although it's fallen out and I don't have it. Overall, these are two pretty cool keyboards with quite a few interesting traits about them. Not much point in me truly giving a verdict as I can't use them anyway, but I'm definitely happy with them. The switches seem okay to use, not too good, but it's a cool design at least, and it's definitely whetted my appetite for the Hall effect version. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on the Bosch keyboard.